Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Genuine Chit Chat, the podcast where we're going to help you grow through what you go through. Today, we are here with Seven. He is a public TEDx speaker, and he helps leaders sort of master their skills in presence, communication, so that you can own the room. And this episode will make you feel empowered and help you yourself master your own personal growth. So, yeah, let's get into it. So welcome back, everyone. Hope you're all okay. So Seven, do you want us to get us sort of just start us off with how you got into this career? Like, what was it like growing up? Or, I mean, not necessarily what you did growing up, but how you just became a public speaker like you are.
Most of us get into it by accident. It's trial and error because you end up doing other things that demand that you do some public speaking, or you've got a goal that demands that you get in front of people and do your best to like inspire them or whatever. Most people who want to be public speakers and they're like, that's going to be my thing, unless they're a little bit later in their career. If they're earlier in their career, there's usually a bit of ego there. I like being on the stage. I want the attention to be on me. So it isn't something where it's like, I wanted to be a public speaker. It was more, I just enjoyed conversations and I enjoyed using my voice. I'm aware of the skills I do and do not have. And I think that's something I had to figure out very early on in my career. And then just started doing it more. And I did enjoy doing it, but it wasn't like, I want to be this thing. So, you know, in my first business, I was very much behind the scenes. I wasn't doing I was doing a little bit of work with the groups we worked with. We worked with young people. My first business, I dropped out of university to co-found. We worked with a lot of young people. And I was doing the delivery, the facilitation of the services that we ran. But I was, for the most part, behind the scenes. But it was before that and after that, I had opportunities to speak on stages, deliver speeches. It was like, oh, this is actually like kind of valuable to people. Oh, shit, like I need to figure this out.
So you ended up at that point realizing like, okay, maybe I actually like doing this. So you sort of focused on that more.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. So you said you left university. Were you not happy with whatever you were doing there to get into this role with young people?
So I guess a little bit of context. I, for about a decade of my life, had very intense social anxiety. Very, very intense social anxiety. So when I went to university, it was still there. And it made university really unenjoyable. And at the same time, I wasn't enjoying academia. The system that is academia, the things it makes you do, are very different from the things I was enjoying before I started, which was in business. And was there still working on some business on the side and stuff like that. And was like, I am not liking the academia. I'm not finding my tribe. I'm a little too socially awkward. These things just kind of kept piling up and was like, I do not like anything that's going on here. But the stuff, and I wasn't in London, I was in Glasgow. So I went to the University of Glasgow for like a year before dropping out. And back in London, I was doing work remotely before remote working was like a big thing. Was doing this work remotely, blah, 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 and was like, I'm really enjoying the idea of this and want to get more into this. I was exploring something called social entrepreneurship, which was basically, to us, was how do you make the world a better place through entrepreneurship? And I was loving that. I was loving all of that, but I was not liking academia and wasn't able to connect with people around me. And at the time, I wish I could say it was this really intelligent, conscious decision, and it wasn't. It was the opposite. It was reactive as opposed to proactive. It was like, this isn't working. I'm gonna go try this thing instead. And in a way, that's a godsend because I was not in a place to consciously make that decision at the time. I was not in a place to go, what do I really want? Do I have the strength and the courage and the confidence to say, I'm going to abandon this thing and go for this thing? No, it was a reactive, I just can't handle this anymore. I'm going to try this thing instead. And it led to, a career in entrepreneurship-ish, but I can't say it was like the strong conscious decision.
But I feel like that's like a prime example of like when everyone says everything happens for a reason or it's a blessing in disguise. Like you feeling uncomfortable in that position at uni was like literally not the universe, but anyone you believe in or just life itself sort of guiding you towards this whole other side of your life, which you're now like in the depths of now. But hearing you say you had quite bad social anxiety, it's quite a leap for someone that has social anxiety to go into entrepreneurship. How did you find that when you first started?
At the time, so I was, let's say I was 19-ish, give or take, and my co-founder was an influencer. He had a lot of charisma, a lot of contacts. So he did all of the sales. He dealt with all of our client relationships, and I hid in the background. And I hated that. I couldn't stand it, especially because actually when I was in school, I still had that really bad social anxiety. But for some reason, when you put me on a stage, head of house at school, and I'm like 16 or 17 or whatever, I was really good and I really enjoyed that. But and I always, I'm an only child, had lots of challenges growing up. I always craved this like connection and this ability to connect with others and to support others. And I'm very much a people person, fairly extroverted. But at that time, I had to hide. I sometimes, if I tried to come into like the sales meetings and stuff like that, I'd actually ruin it. I'd probably decrease the trust a client had in us because I didn't know how to communicate. What it's like now is really interesting because these years later, no one believes this story anymore. Even if they know nothing about me, I just walk into a room, say hi, shake their hand, whatever, and then they hear this story about this like decade of intense social anxiety. They're like, I don't believe you. And this is really important to me because like I'm not special. So if I can make the change, anyone can. We have the I really firmly believe we have all the resources we need within us to become whoever we want, to achieve any result we want to achieve. We might not yet have all the knowledge or all the skills to achieve the end physical result, but we have everything we need to become the person who's able to do that thing, who's able to make that transition. And I'm like ground zero. I'm case study one, because if I can do it, anyone can.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess that's why your main topic you speak about is personal growth, because you've literally been through that whole journey of personal growth. And going back, I could see, I had a look on your site and I saw when you were younger, you sort of felt like life would be easier for others if you weren't around, which is such a sad thought. And I'm sorry that you ever felt like that. But what sort of changed that narrative in your mind to sort of go out about that? Was there a moment or...
I think when something like that becomes a pattern, becomes an unconscious thought, belief, behavior for us, when that thought process becomes a pattern, it's because it is installed for a reason. We believe these things, or we start to believe these things, usually as children, because we are reacting as what Gabor Mate describes as narcissists, right? All children are narcissists is what he describes, because until you're like 8, 9, 10-ish, I think 8, you have no sense of anyone other than yourself. So children always make everything about themselves because their brain is not yet capable of literally
It's why they're
doing the
quite bad at
opposite.
sharing. So they just want everything for themselves.
Exactly. They have no idea that something might have nothing to do with them, which is why when you meet an adult who doesn't realize that it's not about them or makes everything about them, that part of them still hasn't quite grown up yet. But anyway, I remember the reason I'm going back to this is because I remember the very first time I thought things would be easier if I wasn't here. I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And at the time we were almost homeless. And then later after that, I was 8 years going on 9 years. I did experience homelessness. I was in Los Angeles where you don't get the kind of, the system has gotten worse over the years, but even here there's still a little bit of kind of social support, things like that, whereas there's none of that. It's like either you get taken away from your like family or nothing, and it's like there's no between.
Really?
Yeah, just social systems aren't a thing there the way they are here, and they definitely weren't, when I was a kid. So going through these things, these intense periods of challenge, you mirror the people you were around, and I only had my father around, and he was not amazing at dealing with these kinds of things. So I'm getting these signals from the world, from him, and no way of understanding that it's not because of me, but also it technically was because of me, because his life was like this, and he's worried about money and all these things because he has this child to take care of. So it technically wasn't wrong. And so I build this pattern, this mental, neurological process that gets installed at that point. Uninstalling that takes sometimes for some people their entire lives.
Okay.
And so to come round to your question, when did that finally start to shift? There was no one moment that it changed, but I do remember the moment that I thought the opposite. So I'm trained in hypnosis, and it's some of the tools that I use with the folks I work with. But I primarily learned to help myself. So selfishly, it was like therapy wasn't working, certain things weren't working, but understanding why I seem to be programmed like a computer to think in these ways, to still have these habitual thought processes that I had when I was a little kid. Why can't I get rid of this? So I learned these things to almost coach myself through change. And as a result of that, as a result of reading certain books like A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, things that help us understand we might be here for more than just ourselves, right? So it was a mix of understanding my own neurology and a mix of thinking about more than just myself. Slowly things started to get better. And the moment that I realized it was, I don't remember exactly how old I was. I want to say 21 or 22. And I was on, this is a very specific memory, so it's not gonna mean anything to anyone else. I was sitting on the top floor of a London double-decker bus,
Yeah.
staring out the window. There was like trees, just a normal place in London, like maybe some green trees, some cars. I don't remember exactly where. And I had this very specific thought in my head, which was, I want to live.
Wow.
Just 4 words, that's it. And even now saying that gives me goosebumps. Jim Quick describes goosebumps as truth bumps.
Oh, really?
Which is a great little reframe on that, which I love.
I've never heard that before.
And so the reason this is so powerful, it isn't superficially, it sounds powerful or important because it's like a positive thought, and that's true. However, part of learning hypnosis, part of understanding our neurology is understanding that language is a huge part of what we do. So I'm trained in this thing called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which, breaking that down, neuro as in neurology, linguistic as in language, programming as in your neurology can be programmed using language.
Right. Okay.
So I'm super annoying about language. I'm really big stickler about language. If people use like unhelpful language, I will bring them back and just I'm really annoying when it comes to language. And when it comes to the words I want to live, this is really important because if so much of my life is about believing that I'm not good enough, not worthy enough, shouldn't be here, a burden, all these things, your brain gets into the process of bad. Mm-hmm. Our default response is usually to go, I don't want the bad thing anymore. You've probably heard this before, but if I told you, don't think about a pink elephant with wings, what just happens in your brain?
Literally instantly as you were saying it.
Right.
Yeah.
Without any, because the brain can't think in negatives. The brain has to tell itself the thing to not think about to tell itself not to think about the thing. It has to think about the thing to tell itself not to think about the thing.
Wow.
So you have to think of a purple elephant of a pink elephant, whatever I said, because the brain has to go, cool, here's the thing. Now don't do that. But the problem is the thing still appeared in your brain. So if I were to say, I don't want to feel unhappy anymore, I'm still thinking about unhappiness. So my brain still moves towards unhappiness. And you can replace that with any like negative, or negative isn't a great word, but any unhelpful thing, anything you don't want. So there's a big difference between trying to move away from a thing you don't want and moving towards a thing you do want instead.
That makes so much sense, because I remember when I've been into sort of manifesting, they always say when you're saying certain affirmations, you should never use negative words. For example, if you wanted to pass your exams, you wouldn't say, I'm so grateful I didn't fail, because there you're literally focusing on failing. And that makes so much sense when you say it like that. So I guess when you saw that sign, I want to live, it was just one massive sort of positivity flare in your face. It kind of just twisted it all around.
Exactly. That is a perfect example, actually. I don't want to fail my driving test. I don't want to fail at school. I don't want this thing to go wrong. No, I do want positive result. And some of us, it even gets to the point where we're uncomfortable of deciding, like firmly and confidently deciding what the positive result is going to be, right? I'm going to pass with flying colors. I'm going to pass the first time. I'm going to get 100%, like whatever. So simple thing. we're like, oh, do I deserve 100? Maybe like 95 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we mess around with what the final result is going to be because we're like, we're not confident. And then what that does is it leaks into our language, and that leaks into what we manifest, as you described.
Yeah.
So
It's because like we don't want to over expect, or we always I feel like we always, not we, but like a lot of people will underestimate what they can do so they don't feel disappointed with the result. And like you said, that then leaks into the whole system, the confidence. So you're just not fully confident with doing that.
yes.
But that's amazing how you've sort of turned that whole journey around. I can see why you probably, when you were speaking about being homeless, why your journey, you sort of felt like it'd be easy if you weren't here. Because I've seen podcasts with different people and they were once homeless. You feel like you're literally not human. Like everyone just walks past you, like doesn't even act like they care about you. So it's so amazing that you've been able to go from that position to where you are now, which is absolutely amazing.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Honestly, I think it's a lot of luck, which I know sounds like me playing myself, which I just said to people not to do. But the thing is, like, most of us will misunderstand the balance between our role to play and luck. And I have tried very hard, but I've also failed at far more than I've succeeded at. And I think most of us are like that, right? It's that saying of, I didn't figure out the right way to do it. I figured out 1,000 ways that didn't work. And a mix of luck and life giving me new opportunities. I mean, I was a child at that time, right? So that, like, the homelessness and coming out of it, that was not in my hands. I was lucky to have a family. If I have family here in the UK, that's actually why I'm here.
Right. Okay.
Because I had family here that were able to kind of help out from afar by like sending money over whatever. Then things kind of evened out a little bit, and then eventually it was like we had no life left in the US, which is where I was born in LA, and so coming over here, and then went through the rest of my schooling and my university here. But it's tough because as an adult, you go, all of this stuff was out of my hands. What is now in my control? And then even when the thing that is in your control or your influence is something that you can do something about, you still go, was this me? Do I deserve this? I don't know. And so it is a constant, I don't like the word battle, but it's a constant flow back and forth of re-believing in yourself. But it's interesting, like this is what neurology actually is. The most simplistic way of describing it is, sometimes what I'll do if I've got a whiteboard, by the way, I plan to bring out like big cards that I could actually
Really?
show you, but I just haven't had the time to finish making them and show them
Aw.
off. So the way I like to describe this is, imagine, for people at home who are listening and they can't see like the camera, imagine,
to be fair, if you send me a picture of the card when you
Oh,
get back, I can edit it in
yes.
onto the screen so
Okay.
they can see it.
Okay, so what I will do that. So I'm going to describe what's in my head that I'm going to send you. Imagine 4 circles, A, B, C, and D. And there are pathways from A and B, A and C, and then B to D, C to D. So in other words, there are 2 pathways from A to D. Does that make sense as an initial like starter for 10 in your head? Okay, so B is the negative thought. I will describe why later. Negative and positive aren't actually great words, but for now, let's say negative thought. C is the positive thought. And either way, I'm going to get to D. The problem is, if I think the negative thought and go through to B, I might also go through to lots of other negative things that shoot off from B. So most people, they get used to building this pathway that goes through some kind of like negative thought process because it gets them to the result that they want. The challenge is, and what we're doing when we're trying to change our neural pathways is, if C is a positive thought instead, is to get our brain used to going down that pathway of C to D, of A to C to D instead. So you're going down the more positive pathway. Most people, as long as they can get to the result, they don't care. And especially, like, a lot of my career has been around entrepreneurship and tech entrepreneurship as well. A lot of tech entrepreneurship is very dominated by like very aggressive male American mentality, even here in the UK. And so a lot of people are like, as long as I get the result, it doesn't matter, blah, 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 blah. And actually the challenge is, if there are lots of negative or unhelpful consequences of going down this route where you go through that negative, that unhelpful thought, you get lots of consequences. You usually get there more burnt out, more tired, less energy, slower. And so wouldn't you much rather go down the neurological pathway, go down the thought process of positive things? So for example, I only made my first, let's just say someone has a business and they've made $1 million, right? I made my first $1 million, my first £1 million, because I am really great at providing value to people. I feel really positive. I feel grateful. I feel like I deserve this result. That's the positive pathway. If instead they go, I did this because I worked super hard because I had to, because I needed to prove myself and I wasn't good enough and I'm still not good enough. I won't be good enough till I make 10 million, whatever. They go, but either way, I've made the money, so it doesn't really matter, right? But when you go down that negative process, that negative pathway, which is what I did for a lot of my life, you get all these side effects. It's like taking a drug. It's like the difference between healing your body on your own or healing your body using pills that have lots of side effects. Like technically you got the result, and if you need that, fair enough, but which would you prefer? Now, what we're actually doing is, the reason I use this model is to open people's understanding to this idea. But actually, we're not really changing the pathway, we're laying over new pathways. So your brain essentially leaves behind the old pattern and replaces it with the new one, but it happens slowly over time. And this is why this gets challenging, because some people might start, notice no difference or very little difference, and then give up. And, so to come back to your question of like, when did things really change? They changed very slowly. They changed every single day that I made a little decision, and it's still happening. So therefore, it's still changing.
Wow, that's such a great way to look at it. And it baffles you when you hear it like that. It's like, why do we as humans choose to go to route B? Why do we naturally not just go down the more positive, happy way? But I guess it takes, like you said, it takes more effort sort of to go through that and stick with it. But I don't understand why we are wired like that.
If you have to change as an adult, or as an adult, even as a teenager, anything past the age of like somewhere between 8 and 13, you now have, at that point, you have your default mode. This is why like the stereotype of like teenagers getting kind of cranky with their parents, like they love their parents so much, and then like 16 they're like, I hate you,
Yeah.
mom, I hate you, dad, is because basically up till that point you're learning lots from them. Sometimes you don't realize it. It's all through, so much of it is unconscious and through osmosis. At that point you're like, cool, this is the way I am now, not the way I am forever, but this is how my brain sees the default mode of the world. So to answer your question, there's a couple of reasons. One is because we might pick that up from those caregivers. And this is when we start talking about generational stuff, where essentially the way I describe this for people is, this is gonna sound like a tangent, but I promise I'll bring it back around. A really important piece of context is, in life, we exist in, at any point, one of two very broad states: survival mode and creation mode. Now, the easiest way to think about this is, survival mode is any emotional experience that exists just to keep our physical body alive. So, for example, we kind of say that like anger is a negative emotion. I mentioned earlier, negative and positive aren't great words, and this is why. It's because there isn't really such a thing as a negative or positive. There's helpful and unhelpful. And anger is one of these emotions that, in a society, and especially a modern society, is very rarely helpful. It might be a useful spark. I'm angry that this system is unjust, so I'm going to go do something to change. And so it's a spark for change. For the most part, anger isn't very helpful. But anger exists as a useful thing that our physical bodies adapted to physically survive, right? As an example, fear kept us alive. Pretty much anything that exists just for that is survival. So ego, anger, fear, frustration, lust, stress, these things all existed to keep our physical bodies alive and keep us reproducing and keep humanity going and growing. Anything that isn't survival mode, anything at all, is going to, by default, be creation mode. So anything that doesn't exist just to keep us physically alive is creation mode. That means love, creativity, gratitude, trust, connection with other people, wholeness. It's just, I could just keep throwing these words at you. When you speak your truth and you have passion. I say that with passion with an asterisk because passion can come from a few places, but a really healthy, creative passion. These are all examples of being in creation mode. And so that's the tangent. To come back around with that context, the reason we're often operating in survival mode is because we learn from our parents who are living in survival mode, who learned from their parents who were living in survival mode, because 10 generations ago, 50 generations ago, etc., they were permanently or almost permanently probably living in survival mode because they didn't have the privilege that we have now to take a deep breath, step back, meditate, think about what emotional state they want to be in, right? Things are really challenging in our world right now, and I think they're going to get worse, which is one of the reasons why I do a lot of what I do. That being said, multiple things can be true at the same time. Multiple truths can exist simultaneously. So in some ways, the world's getting really challenging right now, and so it's a yes and situation. And we have a privilege. No matter how busy you are, you can take 5 minutes to take a deep breath and bring your awareness back to the now and ask yourself if you want to shift into a creative state, which we can talk about, a little bit later maybe. But that's a privilege that we have now that is a choice. We don't treat it like a choice. That's because the pattern creeps back in and pretends that it is who you are. You are your patterns, you are your nervous system, you are what is ingrained in your body, unless you actively choose to not be that.
Wow, it makes so much sense when you say it like that, and I guess that's why you sort of focus on personal growth, and that's what you speak about, and that's what you can coach. That's what you coach. Sorry, and so what sort of strategies do you have for people? Because I can see on your site you've mentioned the invisible leader, and I don't know whether that was related to the different points you can go down, where you can go down the positive side, or is that completely different?
Yes, I wouldn't say completely different, right? Because we're human beings, and as human beings, we're a whole human. So all of these things, it's like, work-life balance. We know now that that's bullshit. There isn't work-life balance. It's just life.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a situation like that. So, the invisible leader concept, which I sort of based my TED talk around, my TEDx talk, which in hindsight, was really more about fear. So to give some context, I spent most of the talk talking about three big survival emotions that I would call them more states than emotions. They're not emotions, they're states that I think are very prevalent in our society right now. And I didn't make this point successfully, but I should have. If I could do it again, I would do this, where they're all essentially offshoots or manifestations of fear. And that is restlessness, reactivity, and resistance. Resistance to change specifically is what that one means. So these are manifestations of fear. We have a restless mind because we're full of fear about the future, sort of anxiety-ish. It could get into more depth, but that was what that was about. Reactivity, instead of proactively, consciously making a choice, we react. And many of us, every decision we make is a reactive decision. And so that's about pausing in the moment and doing something different instead. And resistance to change. Often we fear change because we get more comfortable in the thing that we know, right, than the thing that might be out there that's different, even if what we have right now isn't great. There's this principle that online has been lovingly termed the region beta paradox, which is a really funny word for it. I don't know why it's called that exactly, but it basically means people will only change if they're at one of two extremes. Things are going so terribly that they're pushed to change, or things are going really well and they feel empowered and encouraged to go even further. When you're in the middle, you become comfortably numb, where you don't love what's going on now, but it isn't so bad that you're pushed to change. where you maybe are more afraid of the fact that things could get worse if you did something else, and so you never push for things to get better. So an easy example is a job, right? I don't love my job right now, but it could be worse. I'm comfortable enough. I don't really like it, but I'm comfortable enough. And then, you waste another 2, 3, 5, whatever years doing that job that you're not happy with, that you need to, you come home and you have to watch loads of Netflix or, and all kinds of things in between, drink or whatever, to be able to cope with the fact that you just are not enjoying your life. And life could be so much more, but you feel like you can't push to more because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, unconsciously to us. So these are these three fear states. And restlessness, reactivity, and resistance. And so my concept of the invisible leader really speaks to the fact that I think we are all leaders, period. We all have versions of ourselves that exist at any one time. We have the 8-year-old version, right? I have the 8-year-old version of myself that just like was going through that period of homelessness. It was like it'd be just easier for my dad and for everyone if I just wasn't here anymore, right? Whatever. And at the same time, you've got the you that in 10 years' time knows it's all going to be okay, the wiser version of yourself. And then lots of things in between. Now, I think our essential selves, our truest, wisest selves, are leaders. And that's the case for all of us, right? The physical manifestations of that might be, I'm a parent. You're a leader as a parent, right? It might be in a workplace, even if I'm only leading the client project, I'm a leader in that way. So these are some manifestations of it. At the end of the day, only we are the final line of leadership in our own lives, right? The buck stops with us. We often outsource our satisfaction, our abilities, our power to other people. So there's a term I love about empowerment, which is empowerment is just where power is, and we all have power within us. So, for example, if you were my boss and I handed in a report that was really bad and you told me off, you're like, Seven, this thing is terrible. My responses are, okay, cool, that's fine. What am I going to do? Or, oh, I'm so annoyed. Jenny hates me. And if I were to keep my power for myself, like I have that power, I can keep that power for myself, consciously choose my response, and go, and by doing so, keep my power and empower myself. But if I let you insulting me, telling me off, whatever it is, hurt me, I am now empowering you to have power over me. Power is this thing that we place in whoever we allow. So, for example, another example is like, people who outsource their sense of ability in their own lives to everybody else, the boss, their government, whatever, or people who are super high agency and they keep it within. The invisible leader is the you that you already have within, that, like I said, we have all the resources we need to access everything we need. The reason is because we all have that leader within, and we simply need to kind of unearth them, dig them up, discover and cultivate that leader that we're meant to be, that we can access whenever we want. That person might need more skills or knowledge. Okay, cool, but the essential self is already there. And it comes by breaking through those 3 fear states. And the way I tend to recommend doing that is by building up 3 creation states instead. The ones I'm using at the moment, I don't know if it's always the same, things might change, but calm, confidence, and courage. So the ability to have peaceful sense of calm, self-directed abilities, the confidence to feel the ways you want to feel, and the courage to do the things you want to do. The confidence and courage can get funny to talk about as separate things because many people don't understand the difference, right? What one of my podcast guests told me was, you can feel very unconfident and still do the courageous thing. And so one is more an internal state and one is more external action, but you need both to be able to break through fear. And so the invisible leader is the you that lies beyond the fears that you have to create the life that you most want.
Wow. Everything you just said there, I feel like I can relate to that in so many different ways, especially where you say you're going to change either when you're pushed out of something. For example, you at uni, you sort of got pushed out because you just couldn't do it any longer, or when you feel empowered. And I feel like the way you discuss empowerment is sort of similar to the law of attraction. When you're feeling empowered and you're feeling in that high state, you're attracting more, which is going to bring better change into your life, which I think it all really does link together. And so you're a coach and you sort of help people master their own personal growth. So how do you do that? How can you help someone that's kind of feeling like they don't want to grow, or they physically can't? Because like you said, everyone can. And I think a lot of people that are in a really bad state don't believe they can. They think they're different to everyone else. They just don't have that in them
Yeah.
to sort of get out of that.
So this is a really important question because this is actually really tough. So my initial reaction was going to be you have to meet people where they're at, and it will depend the answer depends wildly on where that person is at, right? However, so a little story. When I first started my coaching training, one of the first lessons they gave us was this list of coaching principles that as a coach you have to adhere to these 10 things. And some of them are really like obvious things that are so obvious I don't even remember what they were. It's just like live a good life or whatever. There were a couple that were really, really important. And one of them is that you can only help people who give you their permission to help them. Now, this is framed as a kind of moralistic thing, or the way it was taught to me was framed as this kind of moralistic thing. It's not moral to just butt yourself into someone's life and just start helping them without their permission. And that is true.
Do you know what? Sorry, that term, before you go on, I feel like that term, I've heard that sort of before in that context you're speaking about. People sort of describe that as positive toxicity. Toxicity, is that the word?
Yes.
Yeah. Where you're trying to be positive and help someone, but they're seeing it as such a toxic thing because they haven't given their permission to let your positivity into them.
Yes.
Which, yeah, sorry, carry on, but that's what it relates to, yeah.
To an extent, that is exactly what it's right. Although sometimes helping someone isn't necessarily positive, but it isn't always positivity. But in principle, yeah, you're right. It's like if someone hasn't asked for this, it isn't right to give it to them. Now, this is a really smart principle because what wasn't overtly taught to me, but when I went into it, there was no business aspect to the training I did, which some of the other coaches found challenging because they were now good coaches, but they didn't know how to build a business. But I had business experience, so I got it. So I saw this alternate perspective to this rule, which was you wouldn't be able to help them without their permission anyway. What most folks who are in the space of helping and healing and supporting and showing love and acceptance and growth to others need to understand, what most of us, if we don't understand that, we learn it pretty quickly, is that you have a position of immense responsibility. And this is everyone from personal development to therapists to teachers. You have this immense responsibility because you can actually do damage to someone by giving them the wrong things, saying the wrong things, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. We all have experience of like a bad teacher, right? Who like makes us think certain negative things or believe we can't do that subject or whatever. And now imagine this was magnified. Like imagine that was your therapist or your coach or something like that. Like it would be really damaging. And this exists in a lot of spaces, right? Like you can give someone advice that's theoretically really helpful, but they're not ready to receive it. And as a result, it actually puts them off. And because they're put off, they now go in the opposite direction because I'm like, that thing was just awful. And you've actually delayed their timeline. You've delayed when they should have been able to grow to because you put them off by giving them something too early. Anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent, but to come back to it, you're not able to help someone without their permission anyway. If you try, they will not appreciate it because they were not ready for it. They were not open to it. And so they're shut down to this, the potentiality of this. They're shut down to the whatever work you would be doing with them. Their brain's shut down. They're not going to adopt these things and take this perspective on. And so the whole thing was pointless. And so when you say, how do I help someone who maybe something about them wants to change, but they they're not like taking any advice. They don't really believe in themselves. As a result, they're not asking for help. Generally speaking, if someone isn't asking for help, they're not ready for help. And it's one of the really sad and almost like unfair things about life is often those who need the greatest support are the people that you can't give it to, or that's very hard. You need to give them very targeted support, depending on the situation. Because people, if they're not open to it, it'd be like talking to a brick wall. And it would just waste everyone's time, might even do damage to them. It's really, really tricky. The only way that usually works to work with someone like that is to open someone up. Can I open you up to being more aware of where you are now, of where you want to be, and believe that doing something is better than doing nothing, right? It's like moving at 1 mile an hour is infinitely better than moving at 0 miles an hour. 10 miles an hour might be really slow. 12 miles an hour might not seem like much more than 10, but 2 miles an hour is way faster than 0.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
wow,
it's
yeah.
something more than nothing. If you get up out of your bed and move and do something, there is a more than 0% chance that something will happen. But if you stayed in your bedroom all day, there's a 0% chance that something would happen. The world hasn't had any opportunities to give you anything. So of course nothing is going to change. And so opening someone up based on whatever their goals are, and usually the goal if someone's in a really down in the dumps is just to not feel the way they do now, which as we said earlier isn't a great start, isn't a great like language, because you want the positive thing, not the negative thing.
Yeah.
But for some people, that's where they're starting. I just want to not feel like this. And you know what? If that's where they are, meet them where they are and see how you can move out. But I've got a feeling if someone's listening to this podcast and they're at this place this far in the show, they're not that person. There's someone who wants to do a little bit of something and work through something. And at that point, things change into something much more constructive.
Yeah, that's such a good way to look at it. And I guess like what you said, if they're listening this far on, there is a part of them that wants to definitely change because they definitely need help. And so you basically mastering helping leaders to become more confident so they own the room, they own the events they're in, so they can sort of go from one extreme to the other. Because I feel like those people that you help, they're in that position where they're ready, they're open for help, and they want more help. And I've seen that you have introduced energetic fitness. So can you explain what that is and how that can help someone?
Everything is energy. Quantum physics shows us that atoms are vortices of energy that are spinning very, very quickly, which is why a physicist will say that actually we're 99% space. Have you heard this before?
No.
So we look like physical beings. Everything that is physical, right? This microphone, this chair, us. They look like physical objects. We perceive them as that. But actually, if we zoomed in super far on like a super amazing microscope,
I have heard this, yeah.
there's more space in between our atoms than there is space taken up by the atom. We're like 99% space. We just don't look like it. And what these atoms are, they're spinning vortices of energy. Scientifically, so that's the scientific level. Spiritually, traditions all over the world have things to say about this. You've heard of Tai Chi and Qigong? The word Qi, it just means energy. So Tai Chi and Qigong are, they look like very slow martial arts. There's somewhere in between a very slow, very, very slow martial art and meditation. But they're essentially, what they actually are is ways of moving energy around the body. You'll need to look it up because to us, in the West, it doesn't look like much. It looks like someone's just very slowly moving their body around and maybe it feels good. But actually what this is people directing their energy around. So the ancient Chinese, they believe we have 3 pools of energy, which are called Dan Qian. And we have the lower, middle, and upper Dan Qian. So that maps to our gut, our heart, and our brain. Now, guess where science has figured out that we have neurons in our body?
In the brain, in those places.
Those 3 same places. So obviously we have our brain, but we've got neuron-like structures in our heart and in our gut. And other belief systems say very similar things, right? So the Australian Aborigines, they say that we have 2 brains. We have the gut and then the brain up here in
Is
our
that why
head.
they say your gut feeling as well? Like you should trust your gut feeling.
And this is why we have gut feeling, is because there are actually neuron-like structures in our gut that are doing processing, and then they communicate constantly with the brain. So intuition is often channeled through that gut, which is why having a healthy gut is really important. That's a separate conversation. But
Oh my
anyway,
God, this is so like, I feel like this is opening so many different
I know.
views. Wow, sorry, carry on.
So lots of different practices say stuff about energy. Even the Vedic and other South Asian traditions that talk about chakras. That's what chakras essentially are.
I was going to say
energy
that when you
centers.
said the different senses, I was like, that sounds, because I'm quite a spiritual person. Like, I feel like everything you've sort of spoke about, I've related it back to manifesting, law of attraction. And when you were saying those different places, I was thinking that literally sounds like chakras.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, even on my way here to prepare for this, I was doing a little meditation, which was focused on my throat chakra, right? Which I won't always go through with people because it depends on what they're open to. But anyway, the point is, we are energy. Energy is everything that we are, and we have all these ways of accessing energy. And I believe everything that we have access to can be split into one of three resources, and those resources exist on a scale. So imagine a scale from most finite to most infinite. And I can send you a picture of this one too, because I've actually written about this one, so I have a picture already. So a scale of most finite to most infinite. In your most finite, you have time, right? Once the time is spent, you are never getting it back, and you have no idea how much of it you have. In the infinite, you've got money, right? Obviously, you've only got so much money right this second, blah, blah, blah. But it's theoretically infinite. You can always make more. Somewhere in the middle, then, is energy. Energy is a skill, a tool, a resource like any other. Our duty is to figure out how to use it effectively. And the reason is because existing in the middle of the scale, it is sort of finite, sort of infinite, but also sort of above the other two, in the sense that if everything is energy, then everything that we are is energy. And if it's a tool that we can use to direct that energy, we now have access to direct everything that is. And so I see energy as this really like sacred resource. Now, I'm not religious, but I use the word sacred because it's really important. Everything that we can create, being in creation mode, is so powerful, and we can direct that. And so if everything is energy and we can direct energy, suddenly we have this duty to use the energy that we have, to use energy as that resource and direct it for the best possible results, whether that's for our lives, for the lives of people we love, the world around us, and expanding that infinitely into whatever your values, your vision, your goals are. And many of us, we don't see it as a resource. We don't know how to leverage it. We don't understand just how important and powerful it is, and it can get clogged up with those survival states instead. And so some of your energy then gets stuck. It gets misused. There's a really important reason why it gets misused, because we as human beings, we have a special power, and this superpower is called consciousness.
Yeah.
Consciousness is most simple, is at its simplest, is the ability to direct our attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. So I can give you a little example. If you wanted to do a 60 seconds visualization with me, you ready to do that? Is that all right?
Of course I am,
Okay, so
yeah.
everyone listening in, please join along. So I'm going to ask you to get really comfortable in your chair, and you can close your eyes to make the experience even deeper. Take a nice deep breath in, fully in, and fully out to relax. And now I want you to almost zoom out from where you are sitting right now. Imagine, like the camera on a drone, you zoom up and out above the building that you're currently sitting in. And now zoom out even further so you can see the whole street around where you are right now. Zoom out even further so you can see the whole country that you're in. And really notice what this looks like. The geography below you, clouds, the colors. And now what you're going to notice is that this is where you are. You're not wherever your body is. You've forgotten about your body. And now that I've mentioned your body, you're probably thinking about it. So I'm going to invite you to come back into your body and join me in the room again.
Wow.
That is your consciousness. That moment that you think about being in the place and experience that, your consciousness moves to where that is. And so in moments where I do something like that with someone, they realize that you forget about your body. You forget if I projected my consciousness out the window, right? I'm thinking out there. Suddenly I forget that I've got hands and feet, and I just forget to experience being here. We human beings have this superpower that, as far as we know, we're the only living creatures on planet Earth that have it, as far as we know. And so what that means is, whenever you're thinking angry things, unhelpful things, destructive things, egotistic things, when you're living in survival, that's where the energy goes, because that's where your attention is. You've placed your consciousness on that. It's like a unit of consciousness has been placed on that, a bit like how you spend time. So energy is now spent on that thing. That's what my consciousness is gone. That is therefore what I'm building a relationship with. So I'm going to build a relationship with my anger, with my sadness, with these things, or am I going to build a relationship with something that exists in creation mode instead? And that's the choice that we have. But what that means is that it's very easy to unconsciously misuse our energy. But energy is everything, and we can direct it. We have a superpower to direct it. So isn't it our duty to use it as best we can? And so, the physical manifestation of this, because we're energetic beings, to me is how we communicate and build relationships with each other. So a lot of what I'm working with people on is usually public speaking, pitching, negotiation, sales. And there are people that will misuse their energy towards you. They will try to steal your energy, make things really challenging for you. Your response is always exists in protecting your energy is the wrong word, because protection connotates defensiveness, which is a survival emotion. So you see how deep this can go. But understanding where your own energy is, and if you really want to place it there or not, and how to kind of ebb and flow and dance with life such that you maintain the healthiest energy you can and place it all the places you most want to place it, to get the best results possible. I think that's our duty as leaders. And remember, all of us are leaders. So I'm not talking about managers, entrepreneurs, them too, of course. I'm talking about everyone. A leader is someone who knows how to use their energy as the resource that it is, and we are all leaders. So all of us as human beings, the being that we are, the creator that we all are, have a duty to ourselves and to the world around us to use our energy as best we can. And it's simply about learning how.
Wow. So I feel like everything you sort of spoke about in this episode is all linked back to each other, and your whole sort of niche of coaching is teaching people to sort of take the reins on their energy and direct it in a different way. Because when you're speaking about all the different connections you have, if you go down path B, you're going to start creating more negative connections. Or if you go down path C and you start creating more positive, putting more positive energy in the world, you're going to start creating more connections, and that's just going to spread out even further. So it's all sort of based on, like, the starting point is based on taking that energy that you have the power of that energy. You just need to unlock it. And that is, wow. I feel like everything you were just speaking about is like, even the visualization, it is so true. And I guess that's, again, back to the sort of spiritual side to things. When I manifest each night, before I've made this visualization board, and I still keep it next to my bed, but I mean, I've visualized so many times I don't need it. I'll have either future things I'm excited about or something happening this weekend. And when I'm visualizing that, I'm in that state of feeling happy, my energy is in a good place. And then I manifest, and I feel like I'm manifesting at that high energy level that you're going to bring it in.
And I think even for people that kind of struggle with that, right? Because the thing is, the action must exist to back up the manifestation. You can put yourself in the state and never do the action. Some people do the action, they never put themselves in the state. So for anyone who struggles with what you were just describing, I would ask, let's say you have a certain financial goal and you need an opportunity to do a thing that's going to make you that money. Who's going to want to give you that opportunity if you feel like crap, you don't communicate well with them, things like this? I often really don't describe it as coaching, partly because coaching there's a lot of crap coaches out there, so it has some icky connotations, but it's more almost just like training us to be as energetic as we can and to let that energy flow. And it's interesting the way you describe it around manifestation. I find different people need different ways of understanding this, and some struggle to understand some of these links. A longer conversation tends to make it clearer, but not everyone has that time. So I appreciate that from you. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh no, it's amazing your sort of view and how in this conversation you've laid it out so clearly that people can understand. Because normally, like you said, when you say you just manifest, people are like, okay, I don't really know what you mean by that. But it is just controlling your energy. And even the way you're speaking, delivering this speech is amazing. And I want to speak about you doing your TEDx talk. So how did that go? How did you get to that point? That's such an amazing achievement that you got to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know what? It was an accident again.
Really?
So much of this stuff's an accident. So I remember applying to do one a couple of years ago. And then this year they reached out to me to apply. And I'm in a much different place in my career than I was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was doing very different things. And it was kind of leading to where I am now, but I wasn't thinking about it this way. And I went, okay, I knew I wanted to help people discover and cultivate more of the person they are meant to be. I don't know exactly how. Every TEDx event has its own like theme. They set a theme. This one was like minding the gap or something like that. Very British, very London. But anyway, so I had to find a way of fitting it into that. And I had my existing concepts around invisible leader and resistance, reactivity, and restlessness, and found a way of adapting it into that, applied, and kind of just got in. So, which makes it sound like it basically like a job interview. It's like any job interview. You're like, I'm gonna work really hard. They might say no, and they said yes. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's cool. But again, it's like it's an accident. I had to have enough of a portfolio. I had to get through an interview, same as anything else. And the end of the day, like, TED speakers, or TED as an organization, has a principle of ideas worth spreading. And which is a just more niche or more specific way of saying it's got to be valuable. And I think for a long time what I was doing was maybe a little bit valuable to some people or in some ways, but just not that valuable, or not as valuable. And eventually you go, okay, this is actually must be valuable now because someone else, who organizes these things every year or whatever, thinks that it can be. And then you just put 100% into it. But you know what is awkward is for someone who helps other people communicate, I felt more nervous than I usually do. I think, no matter how good you get at these things, or how much you do them. And to be honest, I wasn't doing them for a while, because my last business, basically before last summer, I was doing very different things to what I'm doing now. So we're in basically almost May now, 25, and in end of summer 24, I was a very different person living a different life, and that life kind of fell apart. An old business, a previous job, in a slightly different space, and a lot of it fell apart. For a long time, I didn't believe in myself, such that I thought I could do what I'm doing now. And the world kind of backhanded me, was like, wake up, you need to be more valuable to people. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do that. And after some months of iterating, trying new things, kind of scraping by, my runway getting really short, some things finally started to stick. And it just feels like luck.
Wow. Well, it's amazing. It's honestly, you were meant to be in this position, and that's why you are, because you're going to help so many people that have been listening to this.
Fingers crossed.
You will. But yeah, this podcast is definitely going to be so helpful to people listening, because I would like this whole episode, I've not even realised in a podcast, because I've been so in tune to what you're saying. It's so interesting to sort of, it's really helpful to sort of be told, not be told, but be advised how you can take control of your life. So I think that's when we feel the most stressed, anxious, is when we feel like we're out of control.
Yes.
And what you're explaining, that there's certain ways you just need to sort of not necessarily push those survival states or feelings to a side, but you just need to learn how to use them in a good way, but also focus more on the positive things, like the courage, the confidence. And the more, I guess, you work on yourself, the more you'll grow, and you'll get into that state of mind, which I think is super helpful, and that is going to definitely help a lot of listeners and anyone that's listening to this now. So
I appreciate that.
I've really, really enjoyed this. I feel like it's been a really empowering episode. And towards the end, I sort of ask if you'd want to give one task that a listener can do this week to make themselves feel better, what would you suggest?
So if usually when someone asks what's the one thing, I will talk about a morning gratitude practice because so think about thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that there's a quote I love. I didn't use in this, but I'll give it to you now, which I used in my TEDx talk, which was be careful of your thoughts because your thoughts create your words. Be careful of your words because your words turn into your actions. Be careful of your actions because your actions become your habits. Be careful of your habits because your habits become your character. Be careful of the character you cultivate because your character creates your destiny.
Wow.
Now, thinking about, remember I said I'm a real stickler for language.
Mm-hmm.
This is why, right? That is
Mm-hmm.
your words, your and especially your reactive and unconscious thoughts, words, and actions. Therefore, become your entire destiny, become your entire reality. So, our uh, uh, our first thoughts of the day, especially, become super important. They set the tone for the day. So, one of my favorite songs right now is just called "Grateful." And I will listen to it in the morning. It's my alarm
Oh,
on my
really?
phone, and it's just these like really nice, chilled out lyrics, of all these things that the artist is grateful for, which is the same, which is just basically being grateful for being alive. So that's always my natural reaction. However, I've got a feeling that the folks that you speak to, your listeners, are really interested in their personal growth or development. Sometimes a question that comes up is the question of purpose, right? What is our purpose? One of the guests at my podcast really challenged me on this. I was asking him about his purpose, and he was like, "Well, he was basically like, well, what does purpose even mean?" Because he gave me this story of a hypothetical young boy.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, okay, imagine this boy goes to a school in a not so nice area. But he does well at school and he wins like a sports trophy. This puts the school on the map, so the school makes more money. They reinvest that into the kids. Was that his purpose? Okay, well, between the ages of 40, of 20 and 40, he builds a business, makes a lot of money, employs a lot of people, sells it. He's been really successful. He's created a lot of jobs. Was that his purpose? Okay, so from 40 to 60, he gives back, creates a foundation, mentors other young entrepreneurs, gives away a lot of money. Was that his purpose? Okay, well, from the age of 60 to 80, he raises his granddaughter. He helps her learn a lot. She grows up to smash lots of glass ceilings and do all lots of cool things. And when she's in her 40s, he's long passed away. He's had a massive impact on her life. Was that his purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And the obvious answer is okay, so it's all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Then the question becomes okay, so what's our purpose? If it's all of these things. And my answer now has become our purpose is to be. To just be. To be the us that is achieving, that is executing on our mission, that achieves our vision. That is
Wow.
our purpose. The reason I go through all this is because I think my biggest piece of advice beyond the gratitude right this second is if we're at any point questioning our purpose, I think there's a little practice that anyone can go and do whenever they want. And that is it's in 3 steps. One is to cultivate curiosity. Again, the difference between survival and creation mode. Okay, so curiosity, genuine curiosity, is very often for people one of the easiest creation states to access because we all know kind of what it's like and
Mm-hmm.
we can all kind of get that sense. We're all curious about something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so channeling that, asking important questions with genuine curiosity. Then step 2 is to figure out the root of whatever you want. So for example, I was listening to a podcast recently where the guest, the expert, someone came up to them on the street and was like, I have a question. Can you help me? And they said, okay, what's the question? The question was, how do I be rich? How do I get rich? And the response from this person was, ask a better question. Because the problem is that question, there's so many flaws with that question.
Mm-hmm.
It's superficial, it's too big, it's too vague, it's
Mm-hmm.
too much of an end goal. Now we know what this person's end goal is. They want to make a lot of money. But the right questions go to the root. So curiosity, what is the root of what you really want? Is it to feel worthy as opposed to not feeling good enough. And the money is like a manifestation of that, something like that. So what's the root? And then step 3 would be to do what I call talking to yourself in the second person. So I say that's what I call it. That's just what it is. Imagine, you've got a mirror in your room, your bathroom, wherever. You look in the mirror, and as if you are speaking to a different person, ask yourself a root question with genuine curiosity. So in the second person, as if you're speaking to someone else, ask yourself the questions that you most want the answer to, those root questions, those important root questions. And it's what you might find is, for example, a conversation happens, such as, what do I really want right now? And your brain, your mind, your heart, your soul, whatever word works for you, you might be surprised what they come back with when you ask a root question to yourself with genuine curiosity. And then, like a normal conversation, you just get to whatever the action point is. So, okay, I don't like my job right now. Okay, what should I do about that? And then you get this answer back from yourself. Research this thing, talk to XYZ person, see what happens. And you go, oh, okay, I'll do those things. And this just kind of speeds up your journey. I like to say consciousness is the accelerator. So you're going down this journey of life, and maybe you'll reach the ideal job, the ideal end scenario, whatever that you most want. But the question is just when. And your consciousness gets you to do the things that you need to do to speed it up. And so my biggest recommendation to anyone who's feeling, my podcast show is called Lost and Searching. And it's for this reason. I think a lot of us are feeling lost. We're searching for answers. And the way that you can cut through the noise to ask yourself, to get the answers you most need, or to ask your truest self, to ask that you that is, the 10 years older, deep down, wiser version of yourself, is to ask these root questions with genuine curiosity to that person, that invisible leader that is you, and see what comes back. And I'd recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, like you said, I think everything needs to be not surface level. You've got to go deeper. You've got to actually unlock things further down, more like a deeper energy to realize what it is you want. So I think that's great. And also your podcast is amazing. I listened to a few episodes, and
Thank you.
I was walking on a walk the other day, and my walk felt like I went so fast because I was so engrossed in the episode, because I felt like I could really relate. So it's a great podcast. So anyone listening to this now, go and take a listen to his after, because it will really help you grow through what you go through as well. So it's amazing. Yeah. And I was gonna say your song recommendation for after this. Would you say the Grateful One?
Yeah, probably. I'm loving that right now.
Yeah. Okay, so everyone listen to that as well. And thank you so much for coming on this episode. This has been so opening. I think this is going to be one of the episodes I'll actually listen back to myself, because I never normally do that, because I edit it, I record it, I've heard it all, but I think this is one I'll constantly go back to, because I feel like it is really, really empowering. So
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me, for great questions. I appreciated it. It means a lot, and hopefully people take some cool stuff.
Yes, I'm sure they will. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.